Number, the ultimate secret. When my son married his new wife, I held back the greatest secret of my life. I never told him that I had just inherited my late wife's sprawling Colorado mountain estate. I stayed entirely silent. And that silence became my ultimate salvation. Exactly 1 week after I drained my savings to buy them a luxury yacht for their wedding, my brand new daughter-in-law marched into my living room with a corrupt notary and a legal document designed to leave me absolutely homeless. Her arrogant smirk vanished completely the moment she realized the document she was trying to force me to sign was actually her very own financial death warrant. My name is Samuel Vance. I am 72 years old, and I spent my entire life working as a structural ironworker in Boston. I spent 40 years coming home with aching joints and bruised hands, risking my life on high-rise steel beams to ensure my family never had to worry about their next meal. I am a simple man. I drive an old, reliable sedan. I wear thick denim work shirts. And I live quietly. To Camilla, my son's new wife. I was just a washed-up, blue-collar labouré. She had absolutely no idea about the actual state of my finances. She did not know that my late wife, Eleanor, came from an incredibly old and deeply private family of Western land developers. Eleanor and I lived simply by choice, not by necessity, but Camilla only saw the surface. Just 7 days prior to the impending nightmare, I had paid $150. 0 inches cold. Hard cash to buy them. A sleek coastal yacht. She wanted a fairy tale lifestyle. She wanted sunset cruises, imported champagne, and a floating monument to her own vanity. I paid for it without a single complaint. I emptied a massive portion of my liquid savings because my son, Julian, begged me to do it. He said it would make her happy and solidify their new marriage. Now, 7 days later, she was standing in my living room demanding I sign away the roof over my head. Number, the betrayal at home. Samuel, Camilla said, her voice dripping with incredibly fake sugary concern. Julian and I have been talking for days. We are just so worried about you living in this big house all by yourself. Your health is clearly declining, and maintaining this old property is simply too much physical work for a man your age. I looked up at her from my worn armchair, keeping my face completely blank. My health is perfectly fine. Camilla. I walk 3 miles every morning. I manage my own life. She waved her hand dismissively in the air, treating my words like the meaningless babble of a confused child. Well, you know how unpredictable things can be at your age. One day you are fine, and the next day you fall and shatter your hip. Julian and I decided that we need to start legally managing your assets for you. It is the only responsible thing to do. We found a lovely state-assisted living facility just outside the city. It is very affordable. But before we can get you moved in, we need to immediately transfer the deed of this house into our names. That way, we can quickly sell it and use the funds to cover your basic care. Whatever is left over, we can smartly invest for our future family. I felt the oxygen violently leave my lungs. A state-run nursing home. She was standing in the very home I had shared with my wife for 40 years, calmly telling me she was going to lock me away in a sterile, underfunded room and take the profits from my house to fund her own luxurious lifestyle. I slowly shifted my gaze away from Camilla, looking toward the arched hallway. Julian had walked in shortly after her. He was 35 years old, wearing a sharp, custom-tailored suit, holding a cup of overpriced artisan coffee. He was my son, the boy I had taught to swing a baseball bat, The boy whose expensive university tuition I had paid in full by working endless double shifts on the construction sites. Julian was leaning casually against the doorframe. He absolutely refused to make eye contact with me. He was staring intensely at the screen of his smartphone, aggressively scrolling through his emails, pretending he was completely isolated from the cruel conversation happening right in front of him. "Julian," I said. My voice was low, carrying a heavy, sorrowful weight. "Are you hearing this? Are you genuinely a part of this?" Julian shifted his weight uncomfortably. He finally glanced up, but his eyes darted quickly away from mine, landing on the floorboards. "Dad, come on," he mumbled, his tone completely detached. "Just be reasonable. Camilla is right. You are getting much older. We have to think about the future. It is just a piece of paper. It makes everything so much easier for everyone. Easier for them." That was exactly what he meant. The tension in the room skyrocketed. The hired notary shifted his weight nervously from foot to foot. Clearly realizing he had just walked into the middle of an ugly family betrayal, Camilla stepped closer to the coffee table, tapping her long manicured fingernail aggressively against the legal paper. "Just sign the document. Samuel, we have important errands to run today, and we simply do not have the time to sit here and argue with you. You know you cannot take care of yourself anymore. We are doing you a massive favor." I looked at the heavy brass pen resting on the table. I looked at the quitclaim deed that would officially strip me of my primary residence. I looked at the daughter-in-law who viewed me as nothing more than an obsolete stepping stone. And finally, I looked at the son who had completely surrendered his moral compass. My heart hammered violently against my ribs. A deep, burning inferno of anger started to ignite in the pit of my stomach. But I knew that exploding in rage would not help me. Yelling and screaming would only give Camilla the exact ammunition she needed to legally prove I was emotionally unstable. I needed to be highly strategic. I took a slow, deep breath, trying to steady my racing pulse. I reached my hand out toward the brass pen. I purposely let my fingers tremble, putting on the absolute perfect performance of a broken, utterly defeated old man. I knew exactly what I had to do. I could not sign the paper, but I also could not refuse outright, or they would severely escalate the situation before I had a chance to secure my operational defenses. I had to buy myself some time. I pulled my trembling hand back from the brass pen. I placed my hands flat on my knees and looked directly into Camilla's cold eyes. "I am not signing this document today," I said clearly, letting my voice waver just a fraction. "I need to read through the fine print. I will review it tonight and we can discuss it tomorrow." Victoria let out a loud, dramatic sigh of pure exasperation, tossing her expensive handbag onto the nearby armchair. Julian groaned in deep frustration, pinching the bridge of his nose. But they eventually relented, promising to return the following morning with the police if I refused to cooperate. They stormed out, leaving me entirely alone in the suffocating silence of my home. Number. The digital eavesdrop. The moment their luxury sedan pulled out of my driveway, the frail, confused old man vanished completely. My posture straightened. The lingering shock evaporated, replaced by the sharp, analytical focus of a veteran structural builder. I immediately marched straight toward the guest bedroom where Julian and Camilla had been staying for the past week while their own downtown loft was being renovated. Julian always thought he was outsmarting everyone around him, but he relied on lazy, repetitive logic. I was the one who had physically wired this entire house with an advanced smart home intercom system years ago. I knew the network architecture flawlessly. I walked into my private study, locked the heavy oak door, and booted up my secure desktop computer. I bypassed the standard firewalls and accessed the hidden audio logs recorded by the localized intercom receivers situated in their guest room. I put on a pair of noise-canceling headphones and began scrubbing through the audio files from the previous night. At first, there was nothing but mundane chatter. But then, the timeline hit too. 0 inches the morning. The audio feed crackled slightly as Julian leaned closer to his wife, lowering his voice into a tight, incredibly nervous whisper. Is greater than. Are you completely sure about the legal papers? Camilla, Julian asked. His tone was a pathetic, fearful whisper. Doing this feels like a massive risk. We are talking about stealing his entire life. He is not actually losing his memory. We both know he just misses Mom. The absolute gravity of those specific words hit me like a runaway freight train. Julian knew I was perfectly fine. Yet he was questioning a legal strategy based on a completely fabricated medical premise. Camilla did not offer him any moral reassurance. She instantly snapped at him with a tone so incredibly vicious and commanding that it made me physically recoil. She demanded to know if he was foolish enough to wait around until I inevitably decided to change my estate planning. Then, she loudly stated that her own personal medical contact had already officially signed the preliminary evaluation documents. She proudly declared that a highly corrupt, heavily compensated medical professional had explicitly put in writing that I was currently exhibiting severe, undeniable signs of advanced cognitive decline. But the final, deeply devastating secret was about to abruptly drop into the silence, and it would completely shatter my soul forever. Julian's voice trembled with a sudden, suffocating paranoia. "What about Mom?" he whispered. "What if the hospital administrators ever say something to him? What if Dad ever finds out what we actually did?" My heart skipped a violent beat. My breathing stopped entirely. I sat perfectly still in the crushing darkness of my study, my entire body going rigid with an instinctual primal dread. Eleanor had passed away from a sudden, aggressive illness. It was a tragedy that had broken my world. There was nothing for me to find out. "Keep your voice down," Camilla, he said, her tone instantly dropping into a harsh, venomous warning. "No one is ever going to find out anything. Julian, the hospital doctors are legally bound by confidentiality, and they honestly believe we were just following her advanced medical directives. But we were not following her directives." Julian stammered, his breathing becoming shallow and erratic. She was trying to communicate our HSO as a... She was trying to stay awake. What if Dad eventually requests the detailed medical logs? What if he ever finds out we authorized the hospital administration to withhold the experimental trial medication just so she could not sign her new will? I closed my eyes, and a vivid, excruciatingly painful memory instantly flooded my mind. I remembered the sterile, glaring fluorescent lights of the intensive care unit. I remembered sitting beside Eleanor's hospital bed, holding her frail hand. I had left the city for exactly 2 days to aggressively liquidate assets to fund an experimental, highly promising medical trial that could have saved her life. I had left Devon 7 as her temporary medical proxy. When I returned, she was gone. Julian had told me her heart simply gave out before the doctors could administer the treatment. That was a lie. It was all a massive, carefully orchestrated, sickening lie. She was going to change her estate planning. "Julian," Camilla snapped back on the recording, her voice echoing with a sickening metallic hollow. She told me her lawyer was coming to the hospital to draft a new living trust. She was going to completely cut off our direct access to the primary inheritance accounts. We could not afford to let that happen. While your father was out of town, We made the right call. We withheld the authorization for the trial. We did what had to be done to protect our financial future. The suffocating wave of profound grief that had been drowning me for weeks evaporated into the cold, silent air of the study. The terrible gnawing sadness of losing my wife was instantly burned away by a blazing, catastrophic inferno of absolute rage. The intense, burning fury coursing through my veins was so incredibly powerful that it made my hands stop shaking. My mind achieved a terrifying, flawless clarity. I was no longer a mourning widower. I was a man who had just uncovered a murder. Number. The lethal truth. I continued listening to the audio feed with absolute TDN. Unwavering detachment. They went on to discuss their massive financial crisis. They had completely maxed out their credit lines and taken a staggering high-interest loan from a shadow lending syndicate to fund their extravagant lifestyle. They were drowning in a suffocating $4 million debt. They planned to use my forged power of attorney to immediately use my Boston home as collateral for a massive commercial bridge loan. They were going to steal my equity, pay off their dangerous creditors, and flee to a luxury villa in the Caribbean while I rotted away in a locked psychiatric ward. They had weaponized my profound love for my wife. They had taken advantage of my debilitating grief. My own son had effectively murdered his mother to expedite his inheritance. I reached out and carefully shut down the audio software, making absolutely sure I did not alter the digital access logs. I meticulously covered my digital tracks so Julian would never suspect his private conversations had been compromised. I locked the desktop screen and stood up from the desk. My legs felt incredibly solid. I was a structural builder. I knew exactly how to reinforce a failing foundation, and I knew exactly how to trigger a catastrophic, controlled demolition. I reached into my personal wall safe and withdrew the heavy manila envelope the prestigious downtown lawyer had handed me just days prior. Inside was the secret inheritance Eleanor had quietly left solely to me, a massive R000-acre private valley estate in the Colorado mountains. Rich, with incredibly lucrative geothermal springs, leasing rights that generated $80,000 every single month. Julian and Camilla knew absolutely nothing about this hidden fortune. They believed my Boston house was my only remaining asset. I packed a sleek leather overnight bag with the few essential items I would need for the next 48 hours. I folded a pristine tailored suit, a crisp white dress shirt, and a dark conservative tie. I was not going to face them looking like a ragged, exhausted victim. I was going to walk into the final confrontation looking like an executive executioner. Number. Forging the trap in Colorado. I drove directly to the airport and boarded a private, chartered flight to Denver, Colorado. I bypassed the commercial terminals entirely to ensure my travel remained completely untraceable. As the aircraft climbed above the clouds, the heavy anxiety crushing me finally dissipated. Hours later, I stood in the sleek, high-rise office of Marcus Sterling, a highly respected corporate attorney who managed the complex land leases for Eleanor's hidden estate. Marcus was a tall, imposing man in his late 50s, wearing a tailored suit that radiated ruthless efficiency. I sat down in the leather chair across from his massive desk and placed my briefcase squarely between us. I looked him directly in the eye and laid out the entire terrifying situation. I told him about the forged power of attorney document, the fake nursing home plot, the shadow syndicate debt, and the horrific medical sabotage of my late wife. Marcus leaned back in his chair, pressing his fingertips together as he processed the complex legal warfare I was proposing. A sharp, predatory smile slowly spread across his face. He told me my son made a catastrophic error by assuming a forged document would grant him absolute power. We moved with lethal speed. We immediately established an invisible, heavily shielded corporate entity named Apex Horizon Holdings. Marcus structured the company using anonymous corporate proxies and blind trusts, ensuring that my name would never publicly appear on any registration documents. Apex Horizon was a ghost, a massive financial entity that could operate with absolute impunity and total secrecy. Once the corporate structure was firmly in place and legally registered with the federal authorities, Marcus slid a fresh stack of dense legal transfer documents across the mahogany desk toward me. He handed me a heavy gold fountain pen. He explained that a power of attorney, even a fraudulently notarized one, only grants the proxy the ability to manage assets that are actively owned by the principal individual. If the principal individual no longer owns the asset, the proxy has absolutely nothing left to sell or leverage. I took the gold pen and pressed the nib against the thick parchment paper. Right there in his quiet, secure Denver office, I confidently signed my name, legally transferring the entire deed of my Boston home completely out of my personal possession. I gifted the property directly into the impenetrable corporate vault of Apex Horizon Holdings. I set the pen down, feeling a profound, overwhelming sense of absolute victory wash over my tired bones. The trap was now fully set, armed, and completely inescapable. Number. The final performance. The flight back to Boston felt completely different from my desperate departure. I was no longer a terrified, grieving widower running blindly from a dangerous threat. I was a man returning to a battlefield with an impenetrable shield and a loaded weapon. My mind was razor sharp, replaying every legal instruction Marcus Sterling had given me. When I opened the front door of my Boston home the next morning, the house was eerily silent. Julian and Camilla were sitting at the kitchen island, huddled over a laptop. They immediately jumped up when they heard the heavy door click shut. Camilla rushed over to greet me, her face plastered with that familiar, sickeningly sweet mask of artificial empathy. I kept my gaze fixed firmly on the floorboards, forcing my voice to tremble just enough to sound thoroughly exhausted. I told them I had spent the night walking the city, lost in memories of Eleanor, and that I was finally ready to accept my fate. I muttered something incoherent about how much my joints ached, rubbing my eyes to feign a wave of overwhelming lethargy. "You look incredibly tired, Dad," Julian said softly, guiding me by the elbow toward the empty living room. "You should really go lie down and get some rest. But before you go to sleep, we just need you to handle one tiny piece of administrative paperwork. We found a wonderful commercial lender who wants to help manage the property equity. We just need your final official consent to push the paperwork through." Camilla smoothly pulled a thick stack of stapled documents from her sleek leather portfolio. She placed a heavy brass pen on top of the papers and slid them gently across the glass coffee table. I stared down at the bold black letters printing the words, "Consent to leverage real estate property." My heart hammered against my ribs. But this time it was out of pure, unadulterated irony. They were incredibly eager to leverage an asset that had already been securely locked inside a Colorado corporate vault 24 hours ago. I reached out for the brass pen, intentionally letting my fingers shake uncontrollably. I gripped the cool metal. Hovering the nib over the designated signature line, I looked up at Camilla and Julian, my eyes wide and pleading, perfectly simulating the terror of a confused elder signing his life away. I pressed the pen to the paper. Instead of my usual, precise, structured signature, I deliberately crafted a messy, jagged, barely legible scrawl. I let the pen slip slightly at the end, creating a clumsy streak of dark blue ink across the bottom of the page. It looked exactly like the desperate, uncoordinated signature of a man whose mind was completely failing him. Julian quickly snatched the document off the glass table, the very second I lifted the pen. He could not even hide the flash of greedy triumph that instantly illuminated his face. He checked the messy signature, exchanged a highly satisfied glance with Camilla, and carefully tucked the legal papers back into her leather portfolio. They both let out a synchronized breath of profound relief. They honestly believed they were going to secure their multi-million-dollar shadow loan by tomorrow afternoon. I slowly pushed myself up from the sofa, groaning softly, and began my pathetic, dragging shuffle down the hallway toward my master bedroom. I closed my door, but I did not latch it completely. I listened to the faint, muffled sounds drifting down the quiet corridor. I heard the distinct prided, sharp pop of a champagne cork being pulled from a bottle. They were actively celebrating their victory. They were drinking expensive wine, toasting to their impending wealth, completely oblivious to the massive, inescapable trap that was already tightly closed around their ankles. Number. The corporate guillotine. The following morning, I dressed with meticulous care. I put on my pristine tailored suit, adjusted my conservative dark tie, and polished my dress shoes until they gleamed. I was not going to face them looking like a ragged, exhausted victim. I followed Julian and Camilla's luxury SUV as they drove into the bustling Boston financial district. They pulled into the underground parking garage of a sleek, modern high-rise building that housed the predatory shadow lending firm they had foolishly partnered with. I parked a level above them, waited a few calculated moments, and took the elevator up to the main lobby. I stepped off the elevator and stood quietly near a large decorative pillar, observing the main reception area from a secure, safe distance. Through the thick glass walls of the primary conference room, I could clearly see Julian and Camilla. They were sitting side by side at a massive mahogany table. Camilla was nervously crossing and uncrossing her legs. Julian was constantly checking his expensive gold wristwatch, his face a tight mask of barely contained frantic anticipation. They were eagerly waiting for the loan officer to walk through that heavy glass door and hand them the authorized transfer documents for $4 million. I pulled my smartphone from my inner jacket pocket and checked the digital time. It was exactly 9:45 inches the morning. The official signing was scheduled for 10:00. I looked toward the main elevator bank at the far end of the expansive marble lobby. The polished metal doors slid open with a soft melodic chime. Marcus Sterling stepped out into the bright hallway. He was wearing an impeccably tailored navy blue suit. Holding his sleek leather briefcase firmly in his right hand, he looked like an apex predator entering a shallow pool filled with incredibly vulnerable prey. He spotted me immediately and offered a sharp, curt nod of silent acknowledgement. We had spent the last 48 hours aggressively coordinating this exact moment down to the very last second. He had contacted the appropriate federal authorities the very moment he secured the legal transfer of my property into the impenetrable corporate vault. We had provided them with undeniable concrete proof of the forged power of attorney, the attempted wire fraud, and the ongoing malicious conspiracy to leverage a stolen high-value asset. I walked out from behind the decorative pillar and strode purposefully across the gleaming marble floor. My polished dress shoes clicked sharply against the stone, creating a steady, rhythmic march toward justice. I approached the clear, glass-walled conference room with unwavering determination. I reached out, firmly grasped the heavy stainless steel handle, and pushed the thick door wide open. The polite, welcoming, perfectly rehearsed smile on Camilla's face completely shattered the very second her dark eyes landed on my tailored suit. Julian physically jumped in his leather chair. A loud, sharp gasp escaping his throat, as if all the oxygen had been violently punched directly out of his lungs. They stared at me in total, unadulterated horror. They were looking at a ghost. I did not say a single word. I simply stood at the end of the long mahogany table, keeping my posture perfectly straight, my shoulders squared, and my hands resting calmly at my sides. I locked my eyes directly onto Julian, the sheer naked panic radiating from his pale, trembling face was incredibly satisfying to witness. He opened his mouth to speak, to stammer out some pathetic, fabricated excuse for why I was standing there. But his vocal cords completely failed him. And then the heavy stainless steel handle of the conference room door turned for a second time. Right behind me stood Marcus Sterling, holding a sleek leather briefcase, flanked by 2 fully armed federal agents. The glass door clicked shut behind the federal agents, sealing the room like a vault. Julian remained frozen in his expensive leather chair, his jaw hanging slightly open as his mind desperately struggled to process the impossible scene. He looked from me to the federal agents and back to me, his chest heaving with shallow breaths. The predatory loan officer, who had just entered the room from a side door, held his hands up in absolute surrender, rapidly muttering that he had no idea what was happening and was just facilitating a standard collateral agreement. Marcus Sterling ignored the panicking loan officer entirely. He walked with a calm, predatory grace toward the head of the long conference table. He placed his sleek leather briefcase down on the smooth mahogany surface and popped the brass latches with a sharp snap. He reached inside and pulled out a thick, meticulously organized legal file. "Allow me to formally introduce my client," Marcus began, gesturing respectfully toward me. "You may know him as your father, but in the professional financial sector, he is recognized as the sole proprietor and acting chief executive officer of Apex Horizon Holdings." Julian stared at Marcus in profound confusion, his brow deeply furrowed as his panicked brain desperately tried to connect the dots. Camilla swallowed hard, all the blood draining from her cheeks, leaving her looking physically ill. Marcus offered them a sharp, humorless smile. He calmly explained that Apex Horizon Holdings was a privately managed investment firm. He leaned forward, placing both of his hands flat on the mahogany table. "Because you attempted to leverage an asset you did not own, using a forged power of attorney document across state lines, you have committed first-degree federal wire fraud. There is absolutely no escape from the permanent consequences of your actions." Camilla's face instantly went completely pale. She stammered that she had a valid notarized power of attorney document that explicitly granted her husband the legal right to manage his father's primary estate. Marcus nodded in polite agreement, conceding that her forged document might have functioned perfectly under different circumstances. But a power of attorney only applies to assets currently held by the principal individual, Marcus explained, his voice ringing with absolute finality. Mr. Vance legally transferred the entire deed of his Boston property out of his personal name over a month ago. He gifted the entire estate completely into the impenetrable corporate vault of Apex Horizon Holdings. We officially own the house. You have spent the entire morning aggressively attempting to leverage an asset that belongs to a private corporation. The devastating reality of their situation crashed down upon them like a collapsing concrete ceiling. Camilla slumped back into her leather chair, her breath coming in short gasps as the invisible noose finally pulled incredibly tight around her neck. The lead federal agent, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern expression, reached into his dark suit jacket and pulled out a pair of heavy steel handcuffs. The sharp metallic clinking sound echoed ominously in the tense, silent conference room. "Julian and Camilla Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit massive federal bank fraud, aggravated wire fraud, and the attempted extortion of a federally insured financial institution." Julian crumbled. He fell heavily to his knees right there on the polished marble floor, His expensive designer suit wrinkling around his shaking body, he buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking violently as deep, pathetic sobs tore through his chest. He looked up at me, his face streaked with hot tears, his eyes wide with a desperate, pleading terror. "Dad," Julian cried out, his voice cracking into a high, hysterical pitch. "I am so sorry. Please. You have to stop this. You cannot do this to us. I am your son." I looked down at the man kneeling on the floor. I searched my heart for a single ounce of pity, for any lingering trace of a father's protective instinct. I found absolutely nothing but cold, hardened steel. My voice was completely devoid of any emotion when I finally answered him. "This house stopped being yours a month ago," I said, every word landing like a heavy final blow. "And you stopped being my son the exact day you walked into that hospital and authorized the administration to withhold your mother's experimental treatment." Julian let out a horrific, agonizing wail. He knew in that precise moment that I had heard the audio recording. He knew that his darkest, most unforgivable sin had been completely exposed to the light. The second federal agent hauled him roughly to his feet, securing his wrists tightly in cold steel. Julian tried to reach out toward me, begging for a mercy he absolutely did not deserve. But the agents firmly dragged him backward. Camilla was weeping uncontrollably, her makeup running down her pale cheeks in dark streaks as she was marched out of the glass doors. I stood perfectly still, watching them being paraded away through the crowded financial lobby in handcuffs. Number, the morality clause. 2 months passed since that explosive morning. The legal fallout was incredibly swift and absolutely devastating for them. Julian and Camilla are currently sitting in federal holding facilities, awaiting a criminal trial that will inevitably sentence them to decades in a maximum security prison. The underground syndicate enforcer who held their $4 million debt was swept up in a massive federal raid orchestrated by the authorities using the intelligence Marcus gathered. But the true devastation occurred during the final probate hearing for Eleanor's estate. Marcus Sterling stood before the judge and unsealed my late wife's secondary, heavily guarded trust documents. Eleanor was profoundly realistic about the darkness she saw taking root in Julian's character. She had explicitly instructed Marcus to construct a highly specific, unbreakable legal failsafe directly into the foundation of the blind trust. It was a rigorous set of behavioral conditions. The clause explicitly stated that if Julian Vance was ever found guilty of committing any act of elder abuse against his father, or attempted to unlawfully manipulate, mortgage, or sell the primary estate prior to my natural passing, the entire $12 million balance of his pending inheritance trust was to be instantly and permanently redirected. Because Julian explicitly conspired to evict me, forged a durable power of attorney, and fraudulently mortgaged my property, he unequivocally triggered every single violation listed in the clause. The automated legal triggers within the trust were permanently activated. The entire fortune was immediately routed to an independent pediatric research hospital in Boston. The transfer was completely irrevocable. The money was entirely gone, and Julian would never see a single penny of it. Number A. Legacy reclaimed. The air out here in Colorado is incredibly crisp and clean, entirely untouched by the suffocating smog of the city. I am standing on the wide wooden porch of the massive estate that Eleanor secretly left me, leaning gently against the sturdy railing. The morning sun is just beginning to rise over the jagged mountain peaks, casting a brilliant golden glow across the 2,000 acres of lush green valleys, stretching out as far as my eyes can see. In the distance, the geothermal springs generate a gentle, rolling mist near the winding river. I do not feel lonely out here in this vast open space. I feel a profound, overwhelming sense of absolute freedom. As for the massive house in the Boston suburbs, I decided I never wanted to step foot inside those walls ever again. The memories there had been too deeply tainted by their greed and betrayal. Instead of selling it for profit, I instructed Marcus to execute a legal transfer of the property deed to a highly respected local charity. The sprawling home has now been entirely renovated and officially converted into a free, full-time safe haven for elderly individuals who have been abandoned or abused by their own families. I take a slow, deep sip of my hot black coffee, letting the rich, bitter taste ground me in the present moment. I close my eyes, letting the quiet peace of the mountain valley wash over my tired soul. For the first time since that terrible day in the hospital, the crushing weight of grief is completely gone. I do not feel broken anymore. I feel completely whole. I smile, knowing that I honored her remarkable legacy by protecting myself and delivering the ultimate justice. Blood does not guarantee loyalty, and love should never blind you to the truth. When you spend your entire life sacrificing for your family, it is easily possible to ignore the obvious red flags of extreme entitlement and pure greed. But true wisdom comes with age and the profound realization that trust must be earned, not blindly given. Do not let sentimentality make you a helpless victim. Stand up, protect your legacy, and never let those who betray you dictate your final chapter.